Marcus Sterling sat in his big leather chair on the top floor of his office building. He looked out the window at the busy city below. Cars moved like tiny toys on the streets. People walked around looking small from up here. This view made Marcus feel powerful. He owned this feeling. He had worked hard to get to this place. His office was huge. The walls were made of glass. Everything inside cost a lot of money. The desk was made from real wood that came from far away. The chairs were soft and expensive. Even the pens on his desk cost more than what most people made in a week. Marcus liked it this way. He wanted everyone to know he was rich and important. Marcus was 45 years old. He had thick black hair that he kept perfect with expensive hair products. His suits were made by the best tailors in the city. Each suit cost more than $5,000. His shoes were shiny and made from real leather. His watch was gold and could be seen from across the room. Everything about Marcus said one thing: I have money and power. 12 years ago, Marcus had nothing. He lived in a small apartment. He ate cheap food. His clothes came from discount stores. But Marcus was smart. He was also very mean when he needed to be. He started his tech company with money he borrowed from his family. He promised them he would pay them back with interest. He never did. The company started small. Marcus hired 3 people to work for him. He paid them very little money. He made them work long hours. If they complained, he fired them. If they got sick, he fired them. If they asked for more money, he fired them. Marcus did not care about his workers. He only cared about making money, but his plan worked. The company grew bigger. More clients wanted to hire them. Marcus hired more workers. He moved to a bigger office, then an even bigger one. Each time he got more successful, he became meaner to his workers. Now, 12 years later, Marcus had 200 people working for him. His company made millions of dollars every year. But the workers were scared of him. They called him names behind his back. They said he had no heart. They said he was like a machine that only cared about money. Marcus did not care what they said. He laughed when he heard the things people said about him. Being feared was better than being liked. Fear made people work harder. Fear made people do what he wanted. Fear made him money. Every morning, Marcus walked through the office. He wore his expensive suit and shiny shoes. He did not smile at anyone. He did not say good morning. He just walked and looked at people working. If someone was talking instead of working, he would stop and stare at them. The talking would stop right away. Then he would keep walking. His workers had to follow many rules. They could not talk too much. They could not take long lunch breaks. They could not use their phones during work time. They could not leave early even if they finished their work. They could not ask for time off without giving him a good reason. If someone broke a rule, Marcus would call them to his office. He would yell at them. Sometimes he would fire them right there. Marcus had 3 assistant managers who helped him run the company. But they were almost as scared of him as everyone else. Their names were Tom, Lisa, and David. Tom had worked there for 5 years. Lisa had worked there for 4 years. David had worked there for 3 years. All 3 of them were good at their jobs, but they knew Marcus could fire them anytime he wanted to. Tom was in charge of getting new clients. He was good at this job. He brought in a lot of money for the company, but Marcus never thanked him. Marcus just expected him to bring in more money each month. If Tom did not meet his goals, Marcus would shout at him in front of other people. Lisa was in charge of the workers who wrote computer programs. She was very smart and knew how to solve hard problems. But Marcus always found something to complain about. The work was too slow. The work was not good enough. The workers were lazy. Lisa tried her best, but nothing was ever perfect enough for Marcus. David was in charge of money and numbers. He made sure the company paid its bills on time. He made sure clients paid their bills to the company. He was very careful with money, but Marcus always wanted to know why they were not making more profit. He always wanted David to find ways to spend less money on workers. The 3 managers sometimes talked to each other when Marcus was not around. They all agreed that working for him was very hard. But they needed their jobs. They had families to feed. They had bills to pay. So they stayed and did their best to keep Marcus happy. Marcus had simple rules for business. Make as much money as possible. Spend as little money as possible on workers. Do not care about workers' problems. Do not give workers extra money or time off unless the law said you had to. Fire anyone who caused problems. These rules had made him rich. He often told other business owners about his methods. At fancy dinners and business meetings, Marcus would laugh and tell stories about firing people. He would brag about how much money he saved by not giving workers raises. Other business owners sometimes looked uncomfortable when he talked like this. But Marcus did not care. He was richer than most of them. Marcus believed that workers should be grateful just to have jobs. He thought they should be happy to work for his successful company. If they did not like the rules, they could leave. There were always other people who needed jobs. Marcus could replace anyone. This was how Marcus Sterling ran his empire. He ruled from his big office high above the city. He made the rules. He decided who got hired and who got fired. He decided how much people got paid. He decided everything. And for 12 years, this system had made him very rich and very powerful. But Marcus did not know that his whole world was about to change. He did not know that one conversation with one employee would start a chain of events that would destroy everything he had built. He sat in his leather chair looking out at the city, thinking he was safe at the top. He had no idea that his empire was about to come crashing down. Sarah Martinez walked into the office building every morning at exactly 8 o'clock. She had been doing this for 3 years. 3 years of getting up early, taking the bus and arriving at work on time. 3 years of working hard for Marcus Sterling's company. 3 years of proving that she was one of the best workers he had. Sarah was 28 years old. She had long brown hair that she kept in a neat ponytail for work. She wore simple clothes that looked professional, but did not cost too much money. Sarah was not rich like her boss, but she was proud of her work. She was proud of what she had accomplished. Her job was to manage projects for the company's biggest clients. When a client wanted the company to build them a website or fix their computer systems, Sarah was in charge of making sure everything got done right and on time. It was not an easy job. She had to work with many different people. She had to solve problems quickly. She had to keep clients happy even when things went wrong. But Sarah was very good at her job. In 3 years, she had never missed a deadline, not once. Every project she managed was finished on time or early. Her clients loved working with her. They often called the company and asked specifically for Sarah to manage their projects. This made the company a lot of money. Sarah's desk was in the middle of the big office with all the other workers. It was not fancy like Marcus Sterling's office. She did not have big windows or expensive furniture. Her desk was just a regular desk with a computer, some papers, and a small plant that she took care of. But Sarah liked her workspace. She had put up a few small pictures of her family and friends. These pictures made her smile during long work days. Every morning, Sarah would check her emails and make a list of things she needed to do that day. She would call clients to give them updates on their projects. She would meet with the programmers and designers to make sure their work was going well. She would fix any problems that came up. She worked hard from morning until evening. Sarah was different from many other workers at the company. She did not complain about Marcus Sterling, even though she knew he was not a nice boss. She did not gossip about him or talk bad about the company. She just focused on doing her job well. She believed that if she worked hard and did good work, things would get better for her. This positive attitude made Sarah popular with her co-workers. When other workers had problems, they often came to Sarah for help. She was always willing to listen and give advice. When new workers started at the company, Sarah would show them around and help them learn their jobs. She was kind to everyone. Sarah lived in a small apartment about 20 minutes away from the office. She lived alone with her cat, a gray tabby named Oscar. Her apartment was small but clean and comfortable. She had a little kitchen where she made her meals. She had a living room with a couch and a TV. She had a bedroom with a bed and a dresser. It was not fancy, but it was home. In the evenings, Sarah would go home and cook dinner for herself. She would watch TV or read books. Sometimes she would call her parents who lived in another city. Her parents were proud of her job and how well she was doing. They had worked hard jobs their whole lives to pay for Sarah's education. Seeing their daughter succeed made them very happy. On weekends, Sarah liked to meet friends for coffee or go to the park. She was dating a man named Miguel, who worked as a teacher at a local school. Miguel was kind and funny. He made Sarah laugh. They had been dating for 2 years and were very happy together. 3 months ago, something wonderful had happened. Sarah and Miguel had decided to get married. Miguel had asked her to marry him on a beautiful Saturday evening. They were walking in the park when he got down on one knee and asked her to be his wife. Sarah said yes right away. She was so happy she started to cry. They were planning to have a small wedding in 6 months. They did not have a lot of money, but they did not need a big fancy wedding. They just wanted their families and close friends to be there. Sarah was very excited about getting married and starting a new life with Miguel. Then, 2 weeks ago, Sarah had gotten even more wonderful news. She was pregnant. She was going to have a baby. Sarah and Miguel had been hoping for this to happen. When she saw the positive pregnancy test, she could not stop smiling. She called Miguel right away to tell him. He was so excited he shouted with joy over the phone. Sarah was now 6 weeks pregnant. She did not look different yet, and she did not feel sick like some pregnant women do. But she knew there was a tiny baby growing inside her. This made her feel happy and scared at the same time. Happy because she wanted to be a mother. Scared because having a baby would change everything. Sarah had been thinking a lot about her job lately. She loved her work and she was good at it. She did not want to lose her job because she was pregnant. She had heard stories about women who lost their jobs when they told their bosses they were having babies. This scared her, but Sarah also knew the law. In her country, it was illegal for employers to fire women just because they were pregnant. Companies had to give pregnant women time off to have their babies. They had to let the women come back to work after the baby was born. This was called maternity leave, and it was a legal right. Sarah had been reading about her rights as a pregnant worker. She learned that she could ask for small changes to her job to help her during pregnancy. Maybe she could work from home sometimes if she felt tired. Maybe she could have a few extra breaks during the day. These were reasonable requests that good employers usually agreed to. The problem was that Marcus Sterling was not known for being a good employer. Sarah had seen how he treated other workers who needed help. Last year, a worker named James had hurt his back and needed to sit down more often during work. Marcus had fired him. A few months ago, a worker named Lisa had asked if she could leave work early one day a week to take care of her sick mother. Marcus had said no, and given her extra work as punishment. Sarah was worried about how Marcus would react to her pregnancy news. But she also felt hopeful. She was one of his best workers. Her projects made the company a lot of money. Her clients specifically asked for her to manage their work. Surely Marcus would see that keeping her happy was good for business. Sarah decided she needed to tell Marcus about her pregnancy soon. She could not hide it forever. In a few more weeks, she would start to show. It was better to tell him now and ask for the accommodations she needed. This way, they could work together to make a plan that was good for everyone. Sarah spent several days thinking about how to tell Marcus the news. She wanted to be professional about it. She would schedule a meeting with him. She would explain that she was pregnant and when the baby was due, she would tell him that she wanted to keep working and that she was willing to be flexible. She would show him that having a pregnant employee did not have to be a problem. On Friday afternoon, Sarah decided it was time. She walked to Marcus's office and knocked on his door. Her heart was beating fast, but she felt ready. She had practiced what she was going to say. She had done her research about her legal rights. She was prepared for this conversation. She did not know that this conversation would change her life forever. She did not know that Marcus Sterling was about to show her just how cruel he could be. She thought she was just having a normal business discussion with her boss. She had no idea that she was about to face the biggest challenge of her career and her life. Sarah knocked on Marcus Sterling's office door with her knuckles shaking slightly. She heard his cold voice tell her to come in. She opened the heavy wooden door and stepped into his huge office. The late afternoon sun was coming through the big windows, making everything look golden. But the beautiful light could not make the room feel warm. Marcus's presence made everything feel cold. Marcus was sitting behind his massive desk, typing on his computer. He did not look up when Sarah came in. He kept typing for almost a minute while Sarah stood there waiting. This was one of his favorite tricks. He liked to make people wait. It made them nervous. It showed them who was in charge. Finally, Marcus looked up at Sarah. His eyes were hard and unfriendly. He did not smile. He did not ask her to sit down. He just stared at her and waited for her to speak. Sarah felt her mouth getting dry, but she tried to stay calm. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah began, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I have some news I wanted to share with you, and I wanted to discuss how we can work together moving forward." Marcus leaned back in his expensive leather chair. He put his hands together in front of his face like he was thinking. But Sarah could tell he was already annoyed. She could see it in his eyes. He hated when workers wanted to discuss things with him. "Get to the point, Martinez," Marcus said. His voice was sharp like a knife. "I don't have all day for your personal problems." Sarah took a deep breath. She had practiced this moment many times in her head. She had imagined different ways the conversation might go. But now that she was here, facing Marcus's cold stare, everything felt harder than she had expected. "I'm pregnant," Sarah said clearly. "The baby is due in about 7.5 months. I wanted to tell you as soon as possible so we can plan ahead for any changes that might be needed." Marcus's face did not change at all when she said the words. Most people would smile or say congratulations when they heard someone was having a baby. But Marcus just stared at her like she had told him bad news. The silence in the room was so thick that Sarah could hear the clock ticking on the wall. After what felt like forever, Marcus finally spoke. "And?" he said. Just one word. But the way he said it made Sarah's heart sink. There was no kindness in his voice, no understanding. Just cold annoyance. "Well," Sarah continued, trying to stay positive, "I want you to know that I'm committed to continuing my excellent work here. I've been researching the company's maternity leave policies, and I understand that I'm entitled to 12 weeks of unpaid leave when the baby is born. I'm also hoping we might be able to work out some small accommodations during my pregnancy if needed." Marcus's eyes got even harder. He leaned forward in his chair, putting his hands flat on his desk. Sarah could see the expensive gold watch on his wrist catching the light. She could see the anger building in his face. "Accommodations?" Marcus said the word like it tasted bad in his mouth. "Let me tell you something, Martinez. I don't pay people to have personal lives that interfere with business. I pay people to work. Period." Sarah felt her cheeks getting hot. She had expected Marcus to be difficult, but she had not expected him to be this cruel right away. She tried to stay professional. "Mr. Sterling, I understand your concerns about productivity, but I want to assure you that my pregnancy won't affect my ability to do my job. I've been one of your most successful project managers. I've never missed a deadline. My clients specifically request to work with me. Having a baby doesn't change my skills or my dedication to this company." Marcus stood up from his chair. He was tall, and from where Sarah was standing, he looked very intimidating. He walked around his desk and stood close to her. Too close. Sarah could smell his expensive cologne. She could see the cold anger in his eyes. "Your dedication?" Marcus laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. It was mean and ugly. "You call getting pregnant dedication? You call planning to take months off work dedication? You call asking for special treatment dedication?" Sarah's heart was pounding now. She could feel the baby inside her, even though it was still tiny. She felt like she needed to protect both herself and her unborn child from this man's cruelty. "Mr. Sterling, pregnancy is not a choice to inconvenience you. It's a natural part of life, and legally you're required to provide reasonable accommodations for pregnant employees. Maternity leave is protected by federal law." The moment Sarah mentioned the law, Marcus's face turned red with anger. He hated when workers talked about their legal rights. It made him feel like they were threatening him. It made him feel like they were trying to control him instead of the other way around. "Don't you dare quote the law to me in my own office," Marcus shouted. His voice was so loud that Sarah was sure people outside could hear him. "I built this company from nothing. I make the rules here, not you, not the government. Me." Sarah was scared now, but she tried not to show it. She had to stand up for herself and her baby. She had to try to make Marcus understand. "I'm not trying to threaten you, Mr. Sterling. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about my situation. I've been a valuable employee for 3 years. I've helped bring in millions of dollars for this company. Surely we can find a way to work together." Marcus walked back behind his desk. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. Sarah heard him talking to someone, but she could not understand what he was saying because he was talking quietly. After a few seconds, he hung up the phone. "You're right about one thing, Martinez," Marcus said with a cold smile. "You have been valuable, past tense, but I don't invest in employees who put their personal lives ahead of business. I don't invest in employees who are going to cost me money instead of making me money." Sarah felt like the room was spinning. She could not believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Sterling, you can't fire me because I'm pregnant. That's illegal discrimination." Marcus laughed again, that same cruel laugh. Fire you for being pregnant? Who said anything about that? I would never do something illegal. I'm firing you because of your poor performance and attitude problems. Sarah's mouth fell open. She could not believe what she was hearing. Poor performance? I've never had a single complaint about my work. I've exceeded every goal you've set for me. That's not how I see it, Marcus said. He opened a folder on his desk and pulled out some papers. I've been documenting problems with your work for months. Missed deadlines. Unhappy clients. Poor teamwork. It's all here in writing. Sarah knew he was lying. She knew those papers had not existed an hour ago. Marcus had probably called his assistant and told them to create fake documents about her performance. But she also knew that proving this would be almost impossible. Marcus pressed the button on his phone again. This time Sarah could hear him clearly. Send security up to my office and call HR. Tell them to bring a termination packet for Martinez. Sarah felt like she might faint. This could not be happening. She had come in here hoping to have a reasonable conversation about her pregnancy. Instead, her whole life was falling apart in just a few minutes. Please, Mr. Sterling, Sarah said, and she hated that her voice sounded like she was begging. Please don't do this. I need this job. I have a baby coming. I'll do whatever you want. I won't ask for any accommodations. I'll work right up until the day the baby is born. Marcus sat down in his chair and looked at her like she was nothing, like she was a bug he wanted to step on. Too late for that, he said. I don't work with people I can't trust. And I can't trust someone who hides things from me and then tries to use the law to threaten me. There was a knock on the door. 2 security guards came in, followed by a woman from HR carrying a folder. Sarah recognized the HR woman. Her name was Janet, and she had always been friendly to Sarah before. But now Janet would not look Sarah in the eyes. Ms. Martinez, Janet said in a quiet voice, I need you to come with me to clear out your desk and return any company property. Sarah looked around the room at all these people who were about to destroy her life. She looked at Marcus sitting behind his big desk like a king on his throne. She looked at the security guards who were just doing their jobs but were about to escort her out like a criminal. She looked at Janet, who knew this was wrong but was too scared of Marcus to do anything about it. This isn't over, Sarah said to Marcus. Her voice was stronger now. The fear was being replaced by anger. What you're doing is wrong and you know it. Marcus smiled his cold smile one more time. Yes, it is over. Security will escort you out. If you try to come back or contact any of our clients, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. As Sarah walked out of Marcus's office, she could hear him already making phone calls, probably calling clients to tell them lies about why she was no longer with the company, probably making sure his version of the story was the only one people heard. The walk to her desk felt like the longest walk of Sarah's life. All her co-workers stopped what they were doing to stare at her. Some looked shocked. Some looked sad, but none of them said anything. They were all too scared of Marcus to stand up for her. Sarah packed her few personal items into a small box. Her family pictures, her small plant, a coffee mug her parents had given her. These tiny things were all she had left of 3 years of hard work. Sarah sat in her small apartment that evening, still holding the cardboard box with her things from work. She had been sitting on her couch for 2 hours, staring at the box and trying to understand what had happened to her life in just one day. This morning she had been a successful project manager with a steady job and a bright future. Tonight she was unemployed, pregnant, and scared. Miguel had come over as soon as Sarah called him. He sat next to her on the couch, holding her hand and listening to her tell the story over and over again. Every time she told it, she got more angry and less sad. What Marcus Sterling had done was not just mean. It was illegal. Sarah, you have to fight this, Miguel said for the 3rd time. You can't let him get away with treating you like this. What he did was wrong and you know it. Sarah knew Miguel was right, but fighting seemed impossible. Marcus Sterling was rich and powerful. He had expensive lawyers. He had money to drag out a court case for years. Sarah had nothing except the truth, and sometimes the truth was not enough. But as she sat there thinking about her unborn baby, Sarah realized she had to try. She could not let Marcus Sterling destroy her life and get away with it. If she did not fight back, he would do the same thing to other women. Other mothers would lose their jobs just like she did. Other families would suffer because one cruel man thought he was above the law. The next morning, Sarah started making phone calls. She called every lawyer's office she could find in the phone book. Most of them wanted money up front that she did not have. Some of them said her case would be too hard to win. Others said it would take too long and cost too much. After 20 phone calls, Sarah was starting to feel hopeless again. Then she called the office of Maria Rodriguez, a lawyer who specialized in employment law. When Sarah explained what had happened to her, Maria got very interested. "Can you come in this afternoon?" Maria asked. "I want to hear your story in person. And bring any documents you have from your job. Pay stubs, performance reviews, emails, anything." That afternoon, Sarah sat in Maria's small office. Maria was about 40 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. Her office was not fancy like Marcus Sterling's office. The furniture was old, and there were stacks of papers everywhere. But Sarah felt comfortable there. She felt like someone was finally listening to her. Sarah told Maria everything. She told her about her 3 years of excellent work. She told her about the clients who specifically asked for her. She told her about never missing a deadline. She told her about Marcus's cruel reaction when she told him about her pregnancy. She told her about the fake performance documents that appeared out of nowhere. Maria listened carefully, taking notes on a yellow pad. Sometimes she asked questions. "When did you first tell your boss you were pregnant? Did anyone else hear the conversation? Do you have copies of your performance reviews? Have other employees been treated badly for similar reasons?" After Sarah finished her story, Maria leaned back in her chair and smiled for the first time. "Sarah," Maria said, "what happened to you is one of the clearest cases of pregnancy discrimination I have ever seen. This man violated federal law, state law, and basic human decency, and I think we can prove it." Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time since yesterday. "Really, you think we can win?" "I think we have a very good chance," Maria said. "But I need to be honest with you. This will not be easy. Men like Marcus Sterling don't give up without a fight. He will hire expensive lawyers. He will try to make you look bad. He will drag this out as long as possible, hoping you will give up." Sarah thought about this. She thought about the months ahead, fighting in court while pregnant. She thought about the stress and the worry. She thought about Marcus Sterling's power and money, but then she thought about her baby and about other women who might go through the same thing. "I want to fight," Sarah said. "I can't let him get away with this." Maria smiled. "Good, because I want to fight too. I've been practicing employment law for 15 years, and I'm tired of seeing good people get crushed by bullies like your former boss." Maria explained that she would take Sarah's case on contingency. This meant Sarah would not have to pay any money unless they won the case. If they won, Maria would take a percentage of whatever money they got from Marcus Sterling. If they lost, Sarah would not owe Maria anything. Over the next few days, Maria got to work building Sarah's case. She requested copies of all of Sarah's employment records from Sterling Tech. She interviewed Sarah's former co-workers over the phone, asking them about Sarah's work and about Marcus Sterling's treatment of employees. Many of Sarah's former co-workers were scared to talk. They still worked for Marcus Sterling, and they knew he would fire them if he found out they were helping Sarah. But a few brave ones agreed to tell Maria what they had seen and heard. Tom, one of the assistant managers, agreed to meet Maria in secret. He told her that Marcus had bragged about firing Sarah. Marcus had told Tom and the other managers that he got rid of a problem before it became expensive. Tom was disgusted by Marcus's attitude, but he needed his job and had kept quiet. Lisa, another assistant manager, also agreed to talk to Maria. She told Maria about other times Marcus had treated employees unfairly. She told her about James, who had been fired for having back problems. She told her about other women who had been passed over for promotions after they got married or had children. Maria also found former employees who no longer worked for Sterling Tech. These people were more willing to talk because they did not have to worry about Marcus firing them. 3 former employees told Maria stories about Marcus's illegal treatment of workers. One woman said Marcus had fired her when she asked for time off to take care of her sick child. A man said Marcus had refused to promote him because of his race. All of these stories helped build a picture of Marcus Sterling as a boss who regularly broke employment laws. This would help Sarah's case by showing that what happened to her was part of a pattern, not just a one-time mistake. While Maria was building the legal case, Sarah was struggling with daily life. She had to apply for unemployment benefits, but Marcus Sterling's company fought against her claim. They said she had been fired for poor performance, not for being pregnant. This meant Sarah had to wait weeks to find out if she would get any money to live on. Sarah also had to start looking for a new job. But this was harder than she had expected. She was pregnant, and even though employers were not supposed to discriminate against pregnant women, many of them did anyway. They would interview Sarah and seem interested in hiring her. Then they would notice that she was pregnant and suddenly decide they needed someone with different qualifications. Miguel tried to help by working extra hours at his teaching job. He picked up tutoring work in the evenings and on weekends. But teachers did not make a lot of money, and it was hard to pay for everything they needed. Sarah felt guilty that her situation was making life harder for Miguel too. The stress was also affecting Sarah's pregnancy. She had trouble sleeping. She worried constantly about money and the future. Her doctor told her that stress could be bad for the baby, but Sarah did not know how to stop worrying. 3 weeks after Sarah was fired, Maria filed a lawsuit against Marcus Sterling and his company. The lawsuit accused them of pregnancy discrimination, wrongful termination, and creating a hostile work environment. Maria asked for money to pay Sarah back for her lost wages, money to pay for her emotional distress, and punitive damages to punish Marcus Sterling for his illegal actions. When the lawsuit was filed, a newspaper reporter called Maria to ask about it. The reporter had heard about the case and wanted to write a story about it. Maria asked Sarah if she wanted to talk to the reporter. Sarah was scared about having her name in the newspaper. She was worried that other employers would not want to hire her if they read about her legal case. But Maria convinced her that publicity might help their case. The more people who know about Marcus Sterling's behavior, the harder it will be for him to claim he did nothing wrong, Maria explained. So Sarah agreed to talk to the reporter. She told her story honestly and calmly. She explained that she just wanted to work and support her family. But Marcus Sterling had made that impossible because of his prejudice against pregnant women. When the story appeared in the newspaper a few days later, Sarah was surprised by the reaction. Her phone started ringing with calls from other women who had similar experiences with other employers. Some of them wanted to share their stories. Others wanted to offer support and encouragement. But Sarah also got some mean calls and emails. Some people said she was just trying to get money from a successful businessman. They said she should be grateful that Marcus Sterling had given her a job in the first place. These messages hurt Sarah's feelings, but they also made her more determined to win her case. Marcus Sterling was furious when he saw the newspaper story. He called his lawyer and demanded that they find a way to stop Sarah and Maria from talking to the media. He was especially angry that the story mentioned his company by name and described him as a ruthless CEO. Marcus's lawyer, a man named Richard Hayes, was one of the most expensive employment lawyers in the city. He charged $500 per hour, and Marcus was happy to pay it. Richard had helped Marcus fight off other lawsuits in the past. 2 months after the lawsuit was filed, Sarah's story began to spread far beyond the local newspaper. A young woman named Ashley, who worked at a coffee shop, had read about Sarah's case online. Ashley was angry about what had happened to Sarah, so she decided to post about it on her social media accounts. Ashley wrote a long post explaining Sarah's situation. She talked about how wrong it was for employers to fire women just for being pregnant. She asked her friends to share the post so more people would know about Marcus Sterling's cruel behavior. Ashley used a hashtag at the end of her post, #Sterling Scandal. Ashley only had a few hundred followers on social media, so she did not expect her post to get much attention. But something unexpected happened. Her friends shared the post with their friends. Their friends shared it with even more people. Within a few days, thousands of people had seen Ashley's post about Sarah and Marcus Sterling. More people started using the hashtag #Sterling Scandal to share their own stories about bad employers. Some women shared stories about being fired or treated badly when they got pregnant. Others shared stories about employers who discriminated against workers because of their race, age, or health problems. The hashtag became a way for people to talk about unfair treatment at work. As the hashtag spread, more and more people learned about Marcus Sterling and his company. People started looking up Sterling Tech online to learn more about the company and its CEO. They found the company's website, which talked about their commitment to excellence and their family-friendly workplace. The difference between what the website said and how Marcus actually treated his workers made people even more angry. Some people who saw the post online decided to take action. They looked up Sterling Tech's biggest clients and started calling them. They sent emails asking these companies why they chose to work with a business that discriminated against pregnant women. They posted on social media asking people to boycott any company that worked with Sterling Tech. At first, Marcus Sterling did not know what was happening. He did not use social media much, and he did not pay attention to what people were saying about him online. He was focused on fighting Sarah's lawsuit and trying to make his legal problems go away. But then his assistant manager Tom came to his office with bad news. Tom had been getting phone calls from some of Sterling Tech's biggest clients. The clients were asking questions about the lawsuit and about the stories they were hearing online. They wanted to know if the stories about Marcus firing a pregnant worker were true. Marcus was furious. He could not believe that his business was being affected by what he saw as Sarah's lies and troublemaking. He told Tom to call all their clients and assure them that the stories were false. He said Sarah had been fired for poor performance, not because she was pregnant. But the clients were not easily convinced. Many of them had been following the story online. They had seen the court documents that Maria had filed, which laid out clear evidence of Marcus's discrimination. They had read interviews with Sarah where she came across as honest and believable. The clients were starting to worry about being associated with Sterling Tech. The first client to cancel their contract was Meridian Healthcare, a large hospital system that had been working with Sterling Tech for 2 years. Their contract was worth $400,000 per year. The CEO of Meridian Healthcare called Marcus personally to explain their decision. "Marcus," the CEO said, "we've been following this situation with your former employee. Our board of directors is very concerned about being associated with a company that might be engaging in discriminatory practices. We've decided it would be best to end our business relationship." Marcus tried to argue with the CEO. He claimed that Sarah's accusations were false and that he had done nothing wrong. But the CEO had made up his mind. Meridian Healthcare would not renew their contract with Sterling Tech when it expired at the end of the month. 3 days later, Marcus lost another major client. Global Tech Solutions, a software company that paid Sterling Tech $600,000 per year, also decided to cancel their contract. Their chief executive called Marcus to explain that they could not risk their own reputation by working with a company that was facing discrimination lawsuits. Marcus was starting to panic. Losing 2 major clients in 1 week would cost his company over $1 million per year. But worse than the money was the message it sent to other clients. If Sterling Tech was losing big contracts, other companies might decide to leave too. Marcus called his lawyer, Richard Hayes, and demanded that he do something to stop the damage. "This is all because of that lawsuit," Marcus shouted into the phone. "Can't you get a judge to stop them from talking to the media? Can't you make them keep quiet?" Richard explained that Sarah and her lawyer had every right to talk about their case publicly. "In fact," Richard said, "trying to silence them would probably make things worse. It would make you look like you have something to hide." Marcus did not want to hear this. He wanted Richard to find a way to make all his problems disappear. But Richard was getting worried about representing Marcus. The social media campaign against Sterling Tech was growing stronger every day, and it was making Richard's law firm look bad too. While Marcus was dealing with angry clients, Sarah was watching the online support for her case grow bigger every day. People she had never met were posting messages of encouragement. Some people were sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. Others were offering to help Sarah in any way they could. Maria, Sarah's lawyer, was also amazed by the public response to their case. She had handled many employment discrimination cases over the years, but she had never seen anything like this. Usually these cases got very little attention outside of the legal system, but Sarah's case had somehow captured the public's imagination. "This kind of support is incredibly valuable," Maria explained to Sarah. "When potential jurors see that the community is behind you, it makes them more likely to believe your story and rule in your favor." The media attention was also helping Maria build a stronger case. After the story got more publicity, several more former Sterling Tech employees contacted Maria to share their experiences. They told her about other illegal things Marcus had done over the years. A woman named Jennifer told Maria that Marcus had fired her when she asked for time off to attend her daughter's school play. A man named Robert said Marcus had refused to promote him because of his accent, even though he was more qualified than other candidates. Another woman named Patricia said Marcus had cut her hours after she turned 40, claiming that younger workers were more energetic. All of these stories helped prove that Marcus Sterling had a pattern of discriminating against workers for illegal reasons. This would make it much harder for Marcus to claim that firing Sarah was just a one-time mistake or a misunderstanding. As the Sterling scandal hashtag continued to spread online, it started attracting attention from bigger media outlets. A reporter from a major television news program called Maria to ask if Sarah would be willing to do an interview. The reporter wanted to do a story about pregnancy discrimination in the workplace, using Sarah's case as an example. Sarah was nervous about appearing on television. She was now 5 months pregnant and showing clearly. She worried about how she would look on camera and whether she would say the right things, but Maria encouraged her to do the interview. "This is a chance to tell your story to millions of people," Maria said. "The more people who hear about what Marcus Sterling did to you, the harder it will be for him to win in court." So Sarah agreed to the television interview. She spent several days preparing, practicing answers to questions the reporter might ask. Miguel helped her pick out a professional outfit that looked good on camera. Maria coached her on how to stay calm and focused during the interview. The television interview was filmed at Sarah's apartment. The reporter, a woman named Linda Chen, was kind and professional. She asked Sarah to tell her story in her own words, starting from the beginning. Sarah talked about her 3 years of excellent work at Sterling Tech. She talked about her excitement when she found out she was pregnant. She talked about the cruel way Marcus had treated her when she told him about her pregnancy. During the interview, Sarah stayed calm and spoke clearly. She did not cry or get angry, even when talking about the most painful parts of her experience. She came across as honest, intelligent, and sympathetic. When the interview aired a week later, it had a powerful impact on viewers. The television story reached millions of people who had never heard of Sarah's case before. After it aired, the Sterling scandal hashtag exploded with new activity. Hundreds of new people shared the story and expressed their support for Sarah. More importantly, several more major companies decided they did not want to do business with Sterling Tech anymore. Marcus watched the television interview from his office, getting more and more angry as Sarah told her story. He called Richard Hayes immediately after the program ended. "She's destroying my business," Marcus shouted. "My clients are abandoning me because of her lies. You have to do something to stop this." But Richard had bad news for Marcus. That afternoon, another major client had called to cancel their contract. Dataflow Industries. The story that appeared on the evening news about Sarah's case caught the attention of investigative reporter James Morrison. James worked for the city's largest newspaper and had been following stories about workplace discrimination for several years. When he saw Sarah's television interview, he realized there might be a much bigger story hidden behind this one case. James decided to dig deeper into Marcus Sterling and his company. He started by requesting public records about Sterling Tech. He looked up the company's business licenses, tax records, and any complaints that had been filed with government agencies. What he found surprised him. Over the past 5 years, Sterling Tech had been investigated by the Department of Labor 3 different times. Each investigation was about complaints from former employees who said they had been treated unfairly. The investigations had been closed without any punishment for Marcus, but the complaints painted a picture of a boss who regularly violated employment laws. James also discovered that Sterling Tech had been sued 4 times in the past 6 years by former employees. 2 of the cases had been settled out of court, with Marcus paying money to the employees in exchange for them agreeing to keep quiet about what had happened. The other 2 cases had been won by Marcus's expensive lawyers, but only because the employees could not afford to keep fighting. This information told James that Sarah's case was not unique. Marcus Sterling had a long history of treating employees badly and then using his money and power to avoid consequences. James decided to write a major investigative article about Sterling Tech and its CEO. James spent 3 weeks working on his story. He interviewed 12 former Sterling Tech employees who agreed to speak with him. Some of them were scared and would only talk if James promised not to use their real names in the article. Others were angry enough about their experiences that they were willing to go on the record with their complaints. The stories these former employees told were shocking. Marcus had fired a woman named Carol when she asked for time off to care for her elderly mother. He had refused to promote a black employee named Michael telling other managers that clients would not want to work with someone who looked like him. He had forced pregnant employees to work long hours and then fired them when they complained about being tired. One former employee, a man named Paul, told James about the toxic atmosphere inside Sterling Tech. Everyone was scared all the time, Paul said. We all knew that Marcus could fire us for any reason or no reason. People were afraid to take sick days. They were afraid to ask questions. They were afraid to speak up when they saw something wrong happening. James also interviewed several of Sterling Tech's former clients. These companies had stopped working with Sterling Tech for various reasons, but many of them mentioned concerns about how Marcus treated his employees. One client said they had ended their contract after witnessing Marcus screaming at an employee during a business meeting. While James was investigating Sterling Tech, the social media campaign against Marcus was growing even stronger. The Finder Sterling scandal hashtag was now being used hundreds of times per day. People were sharing stories, posting supportive messages for Sarah, and calling for boycotts of any company that still worked with Sterling Tech. A group of local women started organizing protests outside Sterling Tech's office building. Every day during lunchtime, about 20 women would stand on the sidewalk with signs that said, "Support pregnant workers," and "End workplace discrimination." The protesters were peaceful, but their presence embarrassed Marcus and made his remaining employees uncomfortable. The protests got bigger when a local women's rights organization decided to support Sarah's cause. The organization had 5,000 members, and they organized a much larger demonstration. On a Saturday morning, more than 300 people gathered outside Sterling Tech's building to show their support for Sarah and their anger at Marcus Sterling. The large protest attracted more media attention. Television news crews came to film the demonstration. Newspaper reporters interviewed the protesters. The story was covered on radio shows and discussed on local talk shows. Marcus Sterling's name was becoming known throughout the city, and not in a good way. Marcus was furious about the protests. He called the police and demanded that they arrest the protesters for trespassing, but the police explained that the protesters were on public property and had every right to be there as long as they remained peaceful. Marcus threatened to sue the city, but his lawyer Richard Hayes advised him that such a lawsuit would only bring more negative attention to his situation. The protests and media coverage were having a serious impact on Sterling Tech's business. Marcus had now lost 6 major clients, costing the company over $3 million per year in revenue. Several smaller clients had also ended their contracts. New clients were not calling, because most companies did not want to risk being associated with Sterling Tech's reputation problems. Marcus's remaining employees were also suffering. The company had to lay off 15 workers because there was not enough business to keep everyone busy. The employees who still had jobs were worried that they might be next. Many of them started looking for new jobs, not wanting to work for a company that might go out of business. Lisa and David, Marcus's assistant managers, tried again to convince him to settle Sarah's lawsuit. They explained that the legal fight was destroying the company and hurting innocent employees who had nothing to do with Sarah's case. "Marcus," Lisa said during a meeting in his office, "this has gone too far. The whole city knows about this lawsuit now. Every day we don't settle is another day of bad publicity. Our employees are scared. Our clients are leaving. We need to end this before there's nothing left to save." But Marcus was more stubborn than ever. The protests and media attention had made him feel like he was under attack. Instead of recognizing that he had brought this situation on himself, he blamed Sarah and her supporters for trying to destroy his business. "I built this company from nothing," Marcus told Lisa and David. "I'm not going to let some ungrateful former employee and a bunch of protesters tear it down. If I give in now, every employee will think they can threaten me and get away with it." David tried a different approach. He showed Marcus the company's financial reports, which clearly showed how much money they were losing. "At this rate," David said, "we'll be bankrupt within 6 months. We've already had to lay off people. If we lose any more clients, we'll have to lay off more. Maybe we should think about what's best for the employees who still work here." Marcus looked at the financial reports, and for a moment, he seemed to understand how serious the situation was. But then his pride took over again. "We'll get new clients," he said. "Once we win this lawsuit and prove that I did nothing wrong, businesses will want to work with us again." Lisa and David exchanged worried looks. They both knew that Marcus was living in a fantasy world. Even if he won the lawsuit, the damage to his reputation was probably permanent. Too many people now knew about his cruel treatment of employees. Too many businesses saw him as a liability. That week, James Morrison's investigative article was published in the newspaper. The article was titled, "A Pattern of Abuse, How One? CEO's Cruelty Built an Empire of Fear." It was a devastating portrait of Marcus Sterling and his business practices. The article detailed Marcus's history of discriminating against employees based on their pregnancy, race, age, and health conditions. It included quotes from former employees describing the fear and stress of working for Marcus. It explained how Marcus used his wealth and legal team to intimidate workers who tried to stand up for their rights. The article also included information about Sterling Tech's financial problems and the client defections caused by the Sarah Martinez lawsuit. James had calculated that the company had lost over $4 million in business since the lawsuit became public knowledge. Most damaging of all, the article included a photograph of Marcus taken outside his office building. In the photo, Marcus looked angry and cruel, exactly like the kind of boss that employees would be afraid of. The newspaper printed the article on the front page, with Marcus's photo prominently displayed. The day the article was published, Marcus's phone started ringing with calls from reporters at other newspapers and television stations. They all wanted to interview him about the allegations in the article. Marcus refused to talk to any of them, which only made him look more guilty. The article was shared widely on social media, bringing even more attention to Sarah's case and Marcus's behavior. The Sterling Scandal hashtag reached its highest level of activity ever, with thousands of people reading and discussing the article online. That same day, the Department of Labor announced that they were opening a new investigation into Sterling Tech's employment practices. The investigation would look into all the complaints mentioned in James Morrison's article, as well as any new complaints from current or former employees. The announcement of the federal investigation was the final straw for many of Sterling Tech's remaining clients. 3 more companies canceled their contracts that week, including one client that had worked with Sterling Tech for over 5 years. These companies did not want to risk being associated with a business that was under federal investigation. 8 months after Sarah Martinez had been fired from Sterling Tech, her case finally went to trial. During those months, Sarah had given birth to a healthy baby girl named Sophia. Sarah's lawyer, Maria Rodriguez, had spent the time building the strongest possible case against Marcus Sterling. Meanwhile, Marcus had watched his business empire crumble around him, but he remained determined to fight Sarah in court. The trial took place in the county courthouse downtown. On the first day, Sarah walked into the courtroom carrying her 3-month-old baby Sophia. She looked calm and professional, but inside she was nervous. This was her chance to prove that Marcus Sterling had violated the law when he fired her for being pregnant. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with his expensive lawyer Richard Hayes and 2 other attorneys from the same law firm. Marcus wore his most expensive suit and tried to look confident, but his face was pale and stressed. The past 8 months had been the worst of his life. His company was barely surviving, he had lost most of his clients, and he was facing multiple lawsuits from other former employees. The judge assigned to the case was Judge Patricia Williams, a woman in her 50s who had been handling employment law cases for many years. Judge Williams had a reputation for being fair, but tough on employers who violated workers' rights. This made Marcus and his lawyers nervous. The jury consisted of 12 people from the local community. There were 7 women and 5 men. 3 of the women were mothers themselves, which Maria hoped would make them sympathetic to Sarah's situation. 2 of the men were business owners, which Richard Hayes hoped would make them understand Marcus's position. Maria Rodriguez presented Sarah's case first. In her opening statement, she told the jury exactly what had happened to Sarah. She explained how Sarah had been an excellent employee for 3 years, never missing a deadline and bringing in millions of dollars for Sterling Tech. She described how Marcus had fired Sarah within minutes of learning about her pregnancy, making up fake performance problems as an excuse. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Maria said, "this is one of the clearest cases of pregnancy discrimination you will ever see. Sarah Martinez was fired for one reason and one reason only, because she was going to have a baby. The law says this is illegal, and the evidence will show that Marcus Sterling knew it was illegal when he did it. Richard Hayes presented Marcus's defense in his opening statement. He claimed that Sarah had been fired for legitimate business reasons, not because of her pregnancy. He said that Sarah's work performance had been declining for months, and that Marcus had been planning to fire her even before she announced her pregnancy. My client, Marcus Sterling, is a successful businessman who built his company through hard work and dedication, Richard told the jury. He has employed hundreds of people over the years, including many women and mothers. He did not fire Ms. Martinez because she was pregnant. He fired her because she was not doing her job properly. The trial lasted for 2 weeks. Maria called many witnesses to testify on Sarah's behalf. She called former Sterling Tech employees who testified about Sarah's excellent work performance and Marcus's cruel treatment of workers. She called clients who had specifically requested to work with Sarah because they were impressed with her skills. One of the most powerful witnesses was Tom, the assistant manager who had worked directly with Sarah. Tom was scared to testify against his boss, but he told the truth about what he had witnessed. He testified that Sarah's work was always excellent and that Marcus had bragged about firing her because she was pregnant. Mr. Sterling told me and the other managers that he had gotten rid of a problem before it became expensive, Tom testified. He said that pregnant employees always cause trouble and that it was better to fire them early. Maria also presented evidence of Marcus's pattern of discriminating against other employees. She called 3 former Sterling Tech workers who testified about being fired or passed over for promotions because of their race, age, or family situations. This evidence showed that Marcus regularly violated employment laws, not just in Sarah's case. The most emotional moment of the trial came when Sarah herself testified. She held baby Sophia while she told her story to the jury. She spoke clearly and calmly about her 3 years of dedicated work at Sterling Tech. She described her excitement when she found out she was pregnant and her hope that her boss would be understanding and supportive. Then, Sarah told the jury about the day she was fired. Her voice shook slightly as she described Marcus's cruel reaction to her pregnancy news and the way he had her escorted out of the building like a criminal. Several jury members looked angry as they listened to Sarah's testimony. "I just wanted to keep working and provide for my family," Sarah told the jury. "I never asked for special treatment. I just asked to be treated fairly under the law. Instead, I was punished for something that should have been celebrated." When it was time for cross-examination, Richard Hayes tried to make Sarah look bad. He asked her aggressive questions about her work performance and suggested that she was lying about Marcus's motives for firing her. But Sarah remained calm and answered every question honestly. The jury could see that she was telling the truth. Marcus Sterling also testified in his own defense. This was a mistake that would cost him dearly. On the witness stand, Marcus came across as arrogant and unsympathetic. He showed no remorse for firing Sarah, and he seemed to think that his success in business gave him the right to treat employees however he wanted. When Maria cross-examined Marcus, she asked him about the timing of Sarah's firing. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "isn't it true that you fired Ms. Martinez within 30 minutes of learning about her pregnancy?" "The timing was coincidental," Marcus replied, but his voice sounded defensive. "Coincidental?" Maria repeated. "You had been planning to fire one of your best employees, and you just happened to decide to do it 30 minutes after she told you she was pregnant." Marcus tried to explain about the fake performance problems he had claimed were the real reason for firing Sarah. But under questioning, it became clear that these supposed problems had never been documented before the day Sarah was fired. The jury could see that Marcus was making up excuses. The worst moment for Marcus came when Maria asked him about his comments to other employees after firing Sarah. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "did you tell your assistant managers that you had gotten rid of a problem before it became expensive?" Marcus's lawyer had told him to deny making this statement, but Marcus was too proud to lie. "I may have said something like that," he admitted. "I was referring to the business costs of having employees who can't focus on their work." This admission was devastating to Marcus's case. He had just confessed to the jury that he had fired Sarah because he was worried about the costs associated with her pregnancy. This was exactly what pregnancy discrimination meant under the law. During the 2 weeks of testimony, it became clear to everyone in the courtroom that Marcus had violated the law. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He had fired an excellent employee immediately after learning of her pregnancy, made up false reasons to justify the firing, and then bragged about it to other employees. In her closing argument, Maria summarized all the evidence against Marcus. She reminded the jury that pregnancy discrimination was illegal and that Sarah deserved justice for what had been done to her. She asked the jury to award Sarah money for her lost wages, her emotional suffering, and punitive damages to punish Marcus for his cruel and illegal behavior. Sarah Martinez did nothing wrong, Maria told the jury. Her only crime was getting pregnant and believing that she could trust her employer to treat her fairly. Marcus Sterling destroyed her career and her sense of security because of his prejudice against pregnant women. It's time to hold him accountable for his actions. Richard Hayes made a desperate closing argument, trying to convince the jury that Marcus had legitimate business reasons for firing Sarah. But after 2 weeks of testimony, his argument sounded hollow and unconvincing. The evidence clearly showed that Marcus had discriminated against Sarah because of her pregnancy. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before reaching their verdict. This was a very short deliberation time, which usually meant that the jury had found the case easy to decide. When they returned to the courtroom, the jury foreman stood up to read the verdict. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Sarah Martinez," the foreman announced. "We find that the defendant, Marcus Sterling, violated federal and state laws prohibiting pregnancy discrimination." Sarah started crying with relief and joy. Maria hugged her client, knowing that they had achieved justice. Marcus sat in stunned silence, unable to believe that he had actually lost. But the jury was not finished. They also had to decide how much money Marcus would have to pay Sarah as damages. After another 2 hours of deliberation, they returned with their decision on damages. The jury awarded Sarah $400,000 for her lost wages and future earning capacity. They awarded her another $300,000 for emotional distress and suffering. Most importantly, they awarded her $500,000 in punitive damages, which were meant to punish Marcus for his illegal behavior and deter other employers from doing the same thing. 2 years after the crushing verdict against Marcus Sterling, the transformation of both his life and Sarah Martinez's life was complete. The man who had once ruled over a business empire from his glass office high above the city now sat in a small, windowless cubicle in the basement of an insurance company, processing claims for $8 an hour. Marcus's fall from power had been swift and total. Within 3 months of the jury verdict, Sterling Tech had declared bankruptcy. The company's remaining assets were sold to pay off debts and legal judgments. The office building where Marcus had once felt like a king was now occupied by a different business. The expensive furniture, the leather chairs, the gold watch, the tailored suits, all of it had been sold to help pay the $1.4 million he owed Sarah Martinez. But even selling everything was not enough. Marcus had also been forced to sell his mansion in the wealthy part of town. The house where he had once hosted expensive dinner parties for other business owners was now owned by a young family with 2 small children. They had turned Marcus's cold, formal home into a warm place filled with laughter and love. Marcus's expensive cars were also gone. The BMW, the Mercedes, the vintage Porsche he had bought to celebrate his company's 10th anniversary, all sold to pay his debts. Now Marcus rode the city bus to work every morning, just like the employees he had once looked down on from his office window. The job at the insurance company was the only work Marcus could find. His reputation in the business world was completely destroyed. When potential employers searched for his name online, the first results were news stories about his pregnancy discrimination case and his business failures. No company wanted to hire someone with such a toxic reputation. Marcus's new boss was a 26-year-old woman named Kelly, who had graduated from college just 4 years earlier. She treated Marcus with the same professional courtesy she showed all employees, but Marcus found it humiliating to take orders from someone half his age. Every day, Kelly would assign him tasks that required no skill or creativity: data entry, filing, answering phones. It was mind-numbing work that paid barely enough to cover his basic living expenses. Marcus now lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in a run-down part of the city. The apartment had thin walls, old carpets, and a kitchen so small he could barely fit a table in it. His neighbors were mostly young people just starting their careers or older people living on small pensions. None of them knew about his past as a wealthy CEO, and Marcus was too ashamed to tell them. The isolation was perhaps the worst part of Marcus's new life. During his years as CEO, he had been surrounded by people who wanted his attention and approval. Employees sought his decisions on important matters. Clients took him to expensive restaurants and exclusive events. Other business owners invited him to their homes and asked for his advice. Now Marcus had no friends and no social life. His former business associates avoided him because they did not want to be associated with his failure and disgrace. His family had distanced themselves from him after he had failed to repay the money they had loaned him years earlier to start his business. Marcus spent his evenings alone in his small apartment, watching television and thinking about how different his life used to be. The legal troubles that had destroyed Marcus's business continued to follow him. The 3 additional former employees who had sued him after Sarah's victory had all won their cases. Marcus owed them a total of another $800,000 in damages and legal fees. Since he could not pay these judgments, a portion of his small salary was automatically taken out of each paycheck to pay his debts. This would continue for many years, maybe for the rest of his working life. The federal investigation into Sterling Tech had also resulted in criminal charges against Marcus for fraud and tax evasion. During the investigation, government agents had discovered that Marcus had been hiding income and lying on his tax returns for several years. He had been sentenced to 6 months in minimum security prison, which he had served the previous year. The time in prison had been a shocking experience for Marcus. He had been forced to live in a small cell with another inmate, eat prison food, and follow strict rules about when he could shower, exercise, and make phone calls. For someone who had been accustomed to complete control over his environment, the loss of freedom and dignity was devastating. While Marcus's life had collapsed completely, Sarah Martinez's life had flourished in ways she had never imagined possible. The $1.2 million settlement from her lawsuit had given her the financial security she needed to start over and build something better. Sarah had used part of her settlement money to start her own consulting company, which she named Sophia Solutions after her daughter. The company specialized in helping other businesses create fair and supportive workplaces for all employees. Sarah's personal experience with discrimination made her passionate about preventing other workers from going through what she had endured. Sarah's approach to running her business was the complete opposite of how Marcus Sterling had run his company. She treated her employees with respect and kindness. She offered flexible schedules for parents and caregivers. She provided excellent health insurance and generous vacation time. She celebrated her employees' personal milestones like weddings, graduations, and new babies. This positive approach to business had made Sophia Solutions remarkably successful. Word spread quickly through the business community about Sarah's company and its excellent work culture. Many talented professionals who had left other jobs because of bad bosses applied to work for Sarah. She was able to hire some of the best people in the industry. Several of Sarah's new employees were people who had formerly worked for Marcus Sterling at Sterling Tech. Tom, Lisa, and David, Marcus's former assistant managers, had all joined Sarah's company after Sterling Tech went bankrupt. They were grateful to finally work for a boss who valued their contributions and treated them with dignity. Working for Sarah is like breathing fresh air after being underwater for years, Tom told a reporter who was writing a follow-up story about Sarah's success. She listens to our ideas, supports our professional development, and actually cares about us as human beings. It's amazing what people can accomplish when they're not afraid of their boss. Sophia Solutions had grown rapidly in its first 2 years. The company now employed 35 people and had contracts with major corporations throughout the region. Sarah's clients specifically sought out her company because of its reputation for high-quality work and ethical business practices. Many of Sarah's clients were companies that had previously worked with Sterling Tech before Marcus's downfall. These businesses had been impressed with the quality of work that Sarah and her former colleagues had done, and they were happy to continue working with the same talented people in a healthier business environment. Sarah had also become a sought-after speaker at business conferences and women's rights events. She told her story of fighting workplace discrimination and winning, inspiring other women to stand up for their rights. She had been featured in several business magazines as an example of how adversity could be turned into opportunity. The success of her business had allowed Sarah to provide a comfortable life for her daughter, Sophia, who was now 2 years old and full of energy and curiosity. Sarah had been able to buy a nice house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. She had also set up a college savings account for Sophia, ensuring that her daughter would have opportunities that Sarah herself had not had. Sarah's relationship with Miguel had also grown stronger through their shared challenges. They had gotten married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Miguel continued to work as a teacher, but now he also helped Sarah with some of the administrative tasks at Sophia Solutions. Their partnership in both business and life was based on mutual respect and support. On weekends, Sarah and Miguel would take Sophia to the park or visit Sarah's parents, who had moved to the city to be closer to their granddaughter. These simple family moments filled Sarah with a happiness and contentment that her high-pressure job at Sterling Tech had never provided. Sarah often thought about the contrast between her current life and what her life might have been if Marcus Sterling had simply treated her fairly when she announced her pregnancy. She might still be working in that stressful environment, making money for someone else's company while being afraid of her cruel boss. Instead, Marcus's cruelty had inadvertently freed her to create something much better. The story of Sarah Martinez and Marcus Sterling had become famous throughout the city and beyond. Employment lawyers used Sarah's case as an example when teaching about pregnancy discrimination law. Business schools discussed Marcus's failures as a cautionary tale about the importance of ethical leadership. The case had been written about in legal journals and business publications as an example of how treating employees badly could destroy even a successful company. Sometimes, people who recognized Sarah on the street would stop to thank her for standing up to Marcus Sterling. They told her that her courage had inspired them to speak up about unfair treatment at their own workplaces. Sarah always listened to these stories with compassion, and she often offered advice or referrals to employment lawyers who could help.